President Donald Trump is digging in his heels on tariffs, imposing sweeping duties on goods from Mexico, Canada, and China on Saturday. The tariffs will likely raise the price of everything from Super Bowl avocados to gasoline in cars, from maple syrup to iPhones, experts warned. The backlash was instantaneous. Mexico and Canada, who import more American goods than any other country, quickly responded with retaliatory tariffs of their own. Canadians, in particular, seem to be taking the news personally, giving a Bronx cheer to the Star-Spangled Banner ahead of NHL games across the country Saturday night, and again at a Toronto Raptors home game on Sunday. Trump isn't backing down. This will be the golden age of America. Will there be some pain? Yes, maybe, and maybe not. But we will make America great again, and it will all be worth the price that must be paid. Trump, 78, wrote on Truth Social Sunday in all caps, citing a national emergency over their failure to curb the flow of deadly drugs and illegal immigrants into the U.S. Trump declared a 25% tariff would be imposed on imports from Canada and Mexico, along with a 10% tariff on imports from China. We have big deficits, as you know, with all three of them. And in one case, they're sending massive amounts of fentanyl, killing hundreds of thousands of people a year with the fentanyl. And in the other two cases, they're making it possible for this poison to get in, Trump said in the Oval Office. The extraordinary threat posed by illegal aliens and drugs, including deadly fentanyl, constitutes a national emergency, a White House statement said of Trump, invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, which empowered him to enact the tariffs. The statement said Trump's bold action in imposing the trade levies, dismissed by many during the presidential race as campaign bluster, was intended to hold the nations accountable. But he also suggested they were an attempt to level the playing field against three nations with which the U.S. had a combined $450 billion trade deficit in 2023. Trump blamed Mexico and Canada for being lax in their enforcement in letting fentanyl into the U.S., but also pointed a finger at China for failing to cut off the spigot of precursor chemicals used to manufacture the deadly drugs and keep them from getting into the hands of cartels. The tariffs are also meant to boost U.S. coffers by addressing inherent imbalances in trade between the nations, which Trump says consistently give the U.S. the short end of the stick. The USA has major deficits with Canada, Mexico, and China, and almost all countries. Owes $36 trillion, and we're not going to be the stupid country any longer, Trump proclaimed. The White House made clear that the Trump administration believes America's biggest trading partners have a lot more to lose in a trade war than the U.S. does. Access to the American market is a privilege, the White House said. While trade accounts for 67% of Canada's GDP, 73% of Mexico's GDP, and 37% of China's GDP, it accounts for only 24% of U.S. GDP. However, in 2023, the U.S. trade deficit in goods was the world's largest at over $1 trillion. Additionally, the trading relationship matters a lot more to Mexico, Canada, and China's economies than it does to the U.S. The goods Mexico sells to the U.S. make up 24% of the Mexican economy. For Canada, exports to the U.S. are worth 18% of the economy. U.S. exports to Mexico and Canada are worth just 1% each to the American economy. Trump has said Sunday that the U.S. is subsidizing Canada by importing its goods rather than producing them domestically. He claimed that America's northern neighbor would cease to exist as a viable country if the subsidy dried up. He also repeated his idea in more concrete terms that all these problems would go away if Canada was simply made the 51st state. Make your product in the USA and there are no tariffs, he added in all caps. Why should the United States lose trillions of dollars in subsidizing other countries, and why should these other countries pay a small fraction of the cost of what USA citizens pay for drugs and pharmaceuticals, as an example? The president said on Truth Social, Canada and Mexico almost immediately hit U.S. goods with a 25% counter tariffs. China, meanwhile, has announced plans to take the matter to the World Trade Organization over the new 10% Trump tariff. Trade between the U.S. and those three countries is about $1.4 trillion annually, making up over 40% of U.S. total imports. Bloomberg Economics reported choppy economic seas could be ahead, estimating the budding trade war could raise the current average U.S. tariff rate from just under 3% to a whopping 10.7%. They also warned U.S. GDP could sink 1.2% while threatening to lift inflation by 0.7%.
You got me loser, set me free. You make me